Hello, hello.
Hey there.
All right. Looks like we're play a little video and we'll get started here.
Are you telling me that you have a way to defer the tax situation there? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And so the first one I was referring to is a 1031 exchange, which only applies to investment real estate. The second one I'm referring to is called a deferred sales trust.
A real eye opener to see that there are ways that people can use the regulatory framework, if properly structured, to invest 1031 exchange dollars in things that you would not think were like kind to what they exited from. So it was very impressive. I got to say, you are the first one I've seen pull this off, and I'm pretty hesitant to believe in a lot of these kinds of things. So it's a major feat for me to say, wow, this actually really worked, and it was really cool.
1031 is a way to shelter your income when you sell the thing.
It seems like it delays right here every time. I don't know why, but it's like where it gets caught up
The video
when
gets
someone's
edited.
trying to come in. Let's see what happens here. Maybe it's going to catch up. Maybe not. Let's let Andy in as well. Oh yeah, let's get rid of. Right, we got one coming in. Okay, yeah, we're just gonna. That video keeps going, which is pretty cool. You can check it out on the website. Hey, welcome everybody to another mastermind, Deferred Sales Trust, Capital Gains Tax Masterclass Mastermind on all things how to exit, how to defer capital gains tax. For those who don't know me, my name is Brett Swarts, and I'm founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. And the biggest thing we found is if you don't have a clear plan, that's the number one enemy, because if you don't have a clear plan, there creates confusion. You feel isolated, and you're not even sure, what you're going to do about all of this tax. And so most people get either stressed or overwhelmed, or a little bit even depressed to think about 25 to 50% of their gain to be wiped out by capital gains tax, and until they find us. And then they find us and they go, wow, there's out of real estate or other assets, and create a tax and to build confidence, and gives me some freedoms. And the freedoms that we're focused on right now with the Deferred Sales Trust. First one is typically a lot of our clients have achieved financial freedom, right? Because our minimum deal is $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain. But they haven't necessarily achieved time freedom. Time freedom is the time to do the things you want to do when you want to do them. So if you own businesses or real estate, and you're tied in the management, and you're tied into the day-to-day, you have a challenge with how to spend your time, right? And 1 second here, as my son is trying to get into the condo. We're here in Kona, Hawaii.
The nice thing about these masterminds, it doesn't matter if you're on vacation, if you're at the office, if you're working from home, or if you're working from Hawaii, you can kind of juggle a few different things at once and still help everybody here, right, Brett?
Exactly. Yep. So we'll be back next Friday. We'll be back in the state of California. So, but that being said, yeah. So you want some freedoms, right? So what are you trying to achieve? If you have A's where you're at and B's where you're trying to go, certain clients find this and they're trying to achieve different things and really different type of freedom, right? So it could be freedom from that business or that asset without having to pay the capital gains tax, freedom from having to 1031 and overpay. So we call that the 1031 freedom. So you have the time freedom, you have the 1031 freedom, you have estate tax freedom. You can eliminate the estate tax, 40% estate tax with the Deferred Sales Trust. You also have location freedom. I've had clients who've sold houses, primary homes that they felt trapped in because of the tax, and they're able to sell and relocate to a new location. You also have entrepreneurial freedom, right? You can have the ability to start a business, to start a new venture. Jake and I just closed a deal for a client about a year ago. Fortunately, it was a cryptocurrency exit at the right time, and she was able to use the capital to start being an entrepreneur, to walk away from the W-2 tech job to a entrepreneurial business opportunity with the trust. It could also be retirement freedom. You might want to be completely passive. I know a lot of clients find us too, where they go, look, I don't want a 1031 because I need to be in an active role unless I go to a Delaware statutory trust, but then I'm not diversified, I'm not liquid. And I guess that I would also call that financial planning freedom, where you have the ability to go into different types of assets so that you're not over concentrated, you're not going into more debt, and you're able to diversify, stay liquid, maybe put it in some of the biggest companies in the world with a financial advisor like Jake Miller. So you have all these freedoms, and the question is, which one or two or three are going to unlock what you're trying to achieve? We like to say when you have those multiple freedoms, you can unlock a transformational, wealth plan. And the basis of this too is it's no longer just about cash flow, it's about tax flow, and to the ability that you can have a team to help you execute your tax flow situation, you can build wealth. To the degree that you don't, you're going to get hit with higher and higher taxes because the government is increasingly spending money and increasingly seems like raising taxes. And so we're going to talk about the Deferred Sales Trust today. In particular, we're focusing on how to use it to be an entrepreneurial freedom, how to use the Deferred Sales Trust to invest back into businesses or real estate at your own timing. And we're going to walk through step by step on how to do that, but also the what and the why behind that as well, because it's so important to have that. Jake, that being said, anything else to add to the vision of today's call?
We're all here because we'd like our money to do a little bit more. And it can if we don't chop it all up and give it to the various taxing agencies too fast. We're allowed to do that with the Deferred Sales Trust. So happy that we're all here today.
Excellent. And we also have Pierce. He's the co-host of the podcast. He's calling from an undisclosed location in the
Half in shadows. He seems like a CIA agent. Pierce, how are you?
Am I too bright? Let me flip. I'm on the patio.
But he's a commercial agent and luxury agent down in Newport Beach. And he also has been studying the Deferred Sales Trust. He's part of capital gains tax, which as well. So Pierce will be also calling. There you go, Pierce. We can see you now.
Awesome.
All right. So let's start with a deal close story for a client of the Deferred Sales Trust who wanted entrepreneurial freedom. His name is Shay. In fact, you can watch his entire story on Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel, also capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. He shares how he was an entrepreneur. I mean, he was in a business with a couple partners. It was a marketing business. In fact, anyone ever go to a college football game, you've probably seen his business. It's called Logo Brands. And for the major colleges, they would create swag and different embroideries and sweatshirts and hats and everything that has to do with kind of your sport team, right? It also had businesses too, but a lot of it was big time sports. So he's in Alabama. He's working with a couple partners and the business is going great, although he's ready to move on to the next freedom, the next business, right? And that business happens to be multifamily investments, actually ground up development. And so with the Deferred Sales Trust, he's selling a business. First of all, it has huge capital gains taxes, no basis, about $2.5 million exit price. And he's looking at a large capital gains tax. I think Alabama's with state, federal, and Obamacare was probably like around 30% of about $2.5 million, right? So if you do the math there, 2.5 million, he's looking at 30%. It's about $750,000. And so the question was, do I pay that tax? And also, by the way, I want working capital for my next business venture. So does a Deferred Sales Trust provide what I'm looking for? Otherwise, I just want to pay my tax and I'll just move forward with what's ever left over minus the 750. But if we can defer the tax and I can use this 750 to be an entrepreneur, then I'm all in. But he's in his, he's early 40s. He's not looking to retire anytime soon. He's very active. He's made a lot of wealth so far with his first business venture and also has a couple other business ventures. And this just becomes a tool to unlock entrepreneurial freedom versus having to go get a loan from a bank versus having to, and by the way, even getting loan from banks for a new multifamily developer can be challenging, right? And he didn't want to have to do that or get new capital from somebody else. So into the Deferred Sales Trust, first of all, what happened? He sold the asset for about 2.5 million, 2.6, and that amount of money went into the Deferred Sales Trust. And now he's receiving also, it's typically a 8% promissory note. His is 8%. So that's about $200,000 is what is accruing on the interest. So at first he became a lender, right? He sold in exchange for a promissory note. The ultimate buyer bought the business for 2.5 million and he's out. And now he's left with the promissory note. And now the question is, how do we return back the 2.5 million plus about 200,000 per year? And that's where he starts to look at different investment opportunities. And he says, hey, I have this opportunity to buy some land. In fact, I've already bought the land, but I have an opportunity to build on top of it with a multifamily property. So that's what he did. He used a big portion of the trust funds and he formed an LLC. And that LLC now is part of the working capital to build the deal.
Now, Shay's one of those serial entrepreneurs that likes to come in and go out of real estate pretty much all of the time. So I think this is very critical and important for all of us to pay close attention to, Brett. If you can really focus on how other real estate, now in the world of investors, real estate is kind of a big thing. So there's a lot of people out there who need to hear this. So feel free to repeat yourself if you need to, Brett.
Yep. So thanks for killing it. I had to just close the door again because the kids opened the door and there's how many of you have kids that are just so loud? I think I have the loudest kids. I was at the pool the other day and it was like, it's kind of we're staying in this condo Airbnb and there's older people here, right? We retire here and they're like, your kids are really loud. Can you tell them to like lower it? And we're kind of in the pool. We're like, yeah, I hear you. And so we had to play a game. Instead it was Marco Polo. We played Tap the Water. And so you can't, so like if you talk, you actually are it. So we had to reverse it. So we tap the water. They have to tap the water. Anyways, my kids are loud. I got 5 of them. Okay. So back to where I was at. So yeah. So real estate, right? So if you're a real estate entrepreneur, the Deferred Sales Trust, we believe is made for a time like this because right now is still a great time to sell, right? Now the market is shifting and a lot of people are starting to get to finally like exit and finally accept that like prices maybe not be as high as they were. So we're seeing more transactions for people settling on a little bit lower pricing, obviously because interest rates are higher. So so when this happens when this happens, there's opportunities to go back into real estate. So what is step one? Step one is to actually have the trust form. Step two is to get the promissory note. So in this scenario, 2.5 million goes into the trust. It's owed to him plus about $200,000 of interest per year. But as a team, working with the financial advisor, working with me as the trustee, working with the note holder or the ultimate client, we need to return the capital. So what does that mean? That means we go look for investments. Now, ideally, these investments are going to out earn the 8% plus any expense to the trust over a 10-year period of time on average. And so that's what he's looking to do. So he's saying, I bought the land. Here's basically my basis. Here's my return on it. Takes a couple of years to build, but I like to have working capital. So he forms an LLC, and the trust itself becomes a joint venture partner. So imagine Pierce and Jake were doing a deal, and Jake was the general partner. He found the land. He's out of Utah. He found the land in Utah. He's going to build 100 units. And Pierce is has a lot of capital. He's in Newport Beach, Southern California. Pierce is like, California is really expensive, but Jake, if you can find a deal, I'll put up the capital. But since you're local, you do the work. That's called a joint venture partnership, where one person is putting in the sweat equity, Jake, and Pierce is putting up the working capital, and he's a passive investor. So Pierce can put up the money for Jake and get an ownership of the asset. In this scenario, it'd be the LLC that is building the assets. And in that scenario, Jake and Pierce could form a partnership where Jake says, I'll take 80% of the ownership of the LLC. I'll do all the work. I'll sign on the loan. I'll find and source the deal. I'll negotiate with the brokers. I'll work through the city for planning. I'll hire the contractors. I'll do it all. Pierce, you can hang out at the beach and you can simply, hang out and play beach volleyball and close your real estate deals there, right? But I'll do all of the work. You just put up the capital. You put up 100% of the down payment, and you take 20% interest. But here's the key, Pierce, because you're doing that, I'm also going to give you a pref return, a pref on your money. A pref basically means you're getting the first fruits of the deal after any debt service has been paid. And any general expenses to the LLC. 8%. So let's imagine Pierce puts up, in this scenario, $1 million. $1 million. 8% would be $80,000. So let's say income and expenses. And in the first couple of years, by the way, Jake is just building the property. So there's no cash flow, right? It's simply just building and building and building. So it's actually it's a negative, which is actually a decent thing because there's some depreciation and some expenses that can be written off on perhaps Pierce's other deals or Jake's other deals. So that's a cool thing about owning real estate. But fast forward, let's say the property is built and they start cash flowing, okay? And let's imagine that cash flow is exactly $80,000 per year. $80,000 per year after, it's basically the NOI, right? Income minus expenses after debt service. Let's imagine it's free and clear to keep it simple. It's $80,000. Well, that $80,000 would roll to Pierce in that year, whatever year that might be. In the meantime, his other 80 has been accruing. So let's say it had taken 3 years for Jake to build it. 80,000 times 3 is $240,000. So it's been 3 years and it's accrued at 240. And then that fourth year, it earns exactly 80. Well, that 80 would come in. There's still 240 that's accrued, and that's built up interest to be paid back. Now, all of a sudden, Jake and Pierce get an amazing offer. And this offer is for, let's say $5 million. Let's say all in, it costs about $3 million to build. And now there's an upside of about $2 million from the $3 million debt. Now that difference there is going to pay back Pierce's $1 million plus whatever pref return. In this scenario, remember, it had 240,000 had been accruing those years. So Pierce basically gets $1 million back plus 240,000. Then what's ever left over would be split per the partnership, 80-20. So Jake finally gets paid. Jake had put no money in, but he puts time, energy, blood, sweat, all of the working, knowledge and expertise to get the deal done. So I'm going to pause there. This is so important before we kind of tie in the trust here. But does anybody at all, and I'll have Jake review this as well in a minute, but does anyone at all have any questions about what I just said?
Yeah. So in your scenario, you have, I'll just continue on the example. So I put up $1 million and just said, Jake, go build something. Go buy the land and build it. And then I got an 8% pref on the return. And then, so I got paid back 8%, and then that accrued for 3 years. And then now we start paying Jake after debt service and the pref is, and then we split it 80-20.
You nailed it, Pierce. That's perfect. Exactly.
Yep. And of
Now,
course,
the only way we pay Jake, by the way, is if we make more than we pay the pref back. So if it continued to cash flow, let's say you did not sell the asset, right? It just continued to cash flow for the next 4 years or 3 years at 80,000. Then it would always pay back the pref first, Pierce. So Jake is still getting $0 until all of the pref is paid back.
right. So that's,
go ahead, Jake.
I was just going to say, that's a common security or level of security. I mean, everything is always at risk, but as the general partner with somebody like yourself, Pierce, who, like, I can't do it without you because you've got the money, but I'm the one doing all the work. But I'm going to tell you that I'm going to pay you back first. You get the pref. Like, you actually get a certain amount or percentage before I get any money. And that's a very common practice in a joint venture.
Yeah. So there's a chance here, Jake, Pierce, that Jake gets $0 for a very long time, right? In fact, it could take, years for Jake to get paid back. That's why he's got to be very cautious, and that's why he's getting 80% of the upside should there be more upside, right? So, because let's say it goes really, really well and there's a $7 million gain, right? And you get your $1 million back plus your 240,000. Well, Jake's going to get 80% of that, whatever is the excess of that. So that's the point. And what are we talking about here? We're talking about commercially reasonable. We're talking about, what would two unrelated parties do in a circumstance, right? Where Jake is getting, he's taking risk, right? Pierce is taking risk. And is it equitable given the circumstances, right? Is that making sense on that? Anyone have questions on anything that Jake or I or Pierce just talked about or asked? Good. Yeah, I said it very well. Jake, anything else to add before I tie in the trust?
I would just say that in joint ventures, there's a lot of different varieties and flavors, but what you mentioned with 80-20 is very common because that's two people who individually can't do a project. Together, they can do a project. One is the expert. The other has the money. And so there is a little bit more of a favor towards the expert. However, because he's the expert, there's more risk on his side than the person that has the money. And that's why it's typically structured that way. Again, this is just something that is common. You can see several different examples out there just like this. And that's why we talk about it here today, because now, Brett, as we bring in the trust, we're going to tie it all together.
Exactly. So let's tie in the trust now, right? So in Shay's scenario, back to Shay, remember he sold a $2.5 million business, got a promissory note for $2.5 million plus a $200,000 8% compounding rate of return, right? On that 200 or on that 2.5 million every year. But here's the cool part now. He doesn't have to find a Jake or find anyone else to partner with. He can partner with himself. So Shay himself in this scenario becomes the Jake. So we're going to switch out Shay for Jake. And the trust that owes Shay the money is going to be Pierce. So in this scenario, the trust is going to put the $1 million into this new LLC that's formed, of which Shay personally, he and his wife, are 80% owners of this new LLC entity. And the trust, which owes him the $2.5 million plus $200,000 per year on the promissory note, is going to put up $1 million into this LLC. And together they formed a joint venture partnership. So it's kind of like he borrowed from himself. It's kind of like he was his own bank and he borrowed from the trust. However, he did not borrow. It was a joint venture partnership. It's very important. Why? Why don't we just borrow? Well, borrowing creates a tax consequence. It creates constructive receipt if you borrow against the trust for your own use. So the way that we do this is through a joint venture partnership. And so what does that mean? Well, in fact, he actually did the deal. He's selling the assets right now. He built the project. It's 72 units in Tennessee. These are individual condos. And he's selling them right now. And what's happening? He looked at the trust and what the trust put in, and he's slowly paying back. First of all, it pays the LLC, then the LLC pays the pref. Okay. And then the trust itself, once it receives the money, turns around and can pay him, and he can pay tax on that. So it kind of flows one extra step per the partnership agreement. And when we do it in that order, we remain tax deferred, right? Remain tax deferred. So again, he's selling the assets as they sell. It's rolling into the trust, and then it's paying per the pref back to the trust. I'm sorry, paying the LLC and then back to the trust. And then from the trust, it can turn around and pay him. And notice how we did 8% and 8%. We actually tied 80-20 with an 8% pref with, guess what? We mirrored the note to keep it really simple. Keep it really simple and to keep it commercially reasonable and to keep everything. And this is per the tax attorneys who created this 26 years ago, thousands of closes, billions under management, been through all the audits. They're the ones that have dialed this in. And we look at it like a Rubik's Cube, and they've tilted the cube so that it lines up and it can be as congruent as possible with all of the things that we have to consider here. Okay. So pausing there, Pierce, I want to see if you caught that, because it's really important that you understand what just happened. So how say back what I just said with the trust, Pierce.
So basically, he partnered with his trust. He eliminated the need to bring in a capital partner. He was able to JV with it, and instead of him getting paid the pref from, or him paying someone else the pref, he was paying the trust back the pref, or the trust was paying him the pref on top of it. So he was still able to cash flow while, having the trust basically like cover it. Is that right?
I think you pretty much hit it. Maybe the last part you might have been a little bit off. Jake, what did he miss there?
So adding all of this in, right? Let's revert back to Shay, and let's just kind of talk about him and his future goals and desires. I think that'll tie it all together. And I think you would best be able to kind of,
Yeah.
With Shay, I love stories because people relate more to stories based on what somebody else has done and how that's similar to them.
Yeah, I'll tie it back in. Yeah. So, and Pierce, you're just about there, right? So I think you just missed the lead, and I might have made it confusing too. So the funds went into this LLC. The LLC built the project. Then the funds just go back to the LLC, and then per the LLC 80/20, it's got to pay back the pref that the trust put in. Remember this scenario: the trust was Pierce, and Shay was Jake, right? So, but in this scenario, Shay has the LLC. He's Jake, and the trust owes Shay the money. Right. So that's the part where sometimes it gets a little bit confusing because there are separate entities, but it's kind of like he borrowed from himself because it's going to turn around and pay him anyways through the trust, that same 8%. So,
but because the trust is split 80/20, or the LLC is split 80/20 with the percentage of, with the 20% being in the trust and 80% being in Shay, right? That's how it's structured.
Yeah, the LLC is 80% Shay and his wife and 20% for the trust. But remember, Shay doesn't own the trust. If he owned the trust, it'd be taxable, but the trust does owe him the money.
Right. But so once the building starts to cash flow, you can set it up. Either you can take the pref or you can give it back to the trust, right? Because as an LLC, and if you own 80%, don't you get 80% of the potential cash flow
after the pref? So let's play that scenario out, right?
The trust is the one that gets the pref because they're the ones putting up the capital, right?
Correct. Which you can turn around immediately and pay Shay if you wanted that $80,000 distribution.
Okay, so the trust is the one who gets the 80% or the 8% pref because it owes the note.
In the scenario that we did with you and I, you are the trust in the sense that I was the expert builder and you had the money. Now it's the trust that has the money, the trust that gets the pref, and you or Shay is the builder developer person.
But the depreciation would still flow through and we would get 80%. Shay would get 80% of the depreciation that flows through. Correct?
You got it. It's the same thing with an LLC. Just like if Jake were doing it with you, he'd get 80% of the depreciation, and Pierce, if you were to the 20% owner, you get 20% of the depreciation.
So the difference is the trust has to get paid back first.
Exactly. Just like any investor would have to get paid back first, right? If that's the way it was structured with the pref, a preferred return. Now, if there were no pref, right, maybe it needs to be 50-50. Just straight up, right? So basically, we've dialed it in, and the reason we've dialed it in, some people say, why not 98-2? Why not 90-10? Right? Why not 70-30? Based upon the parameters of which the tax attorneys have basically designed, we found that this is the most favorable way in this scenario to have Shay get as much upside while still remaining commercially reasonable, and for the trust to be paid back. Because that's the ultimate goal of the trust, is to pay back Shay plus a rate of return over the period of time. And as Shay receives those payments, he'll pay tax on that. But in the meantime, it's in a tax deferred state if it's in that LLC he's building. And that's the power of this, right? Not only has he practiced entrepreneurial freedom, which is his number one goal, was to remain an entrepreneur. B, he's also built more wealth, because after that pref has been paid back, and this is to kind of finish Jake's thought on this, or question on this, is he's going to get the majority of that upside on that. So that extra 80%, and it's still playing out because they're selling one condo at a time, right? So it's still playing out. And so after it basically comes in, it's paying off the pref, right? And then it's going to go 80-20 on the cash flows until there's excess, and then it's completely 80-20 overall. And then at that point, that bigger amount can be also put into another promissory note. So let's bring that together. Let's imagine the project cost $3 million to build. Let's say it sells it for $10 million. Now that excess is about $7 million. Pay back the original $1 million plus the pref. Let's say after the pref, it's like $6.5 million, however long it took. That's going to be split 80-20, 20% to the trust, 80% to Shay. But Shay can put that as a promissory note. In other words, the trust can now buy that position and exchange it for a promissory note. And so now he has 2 promissory notes, the original one for 2.5 million at an 8%, the other one for, let's say, 6.5 million, if that's the way the numbers worked out, all into one trust, multiple promissory notes, of which now he has a bigger pile of money, of which he can go reinvest and be an entrepreneur. But here's the key. He's not seeing deals that make a lot of sense right now, right? And by the way, the stock market is probably on sale right now, right? I'll leave that up to Jake Miller as the financial expert here with the stock market, securities professional, CFP. But now that's the part where he unlocks what's called optimal timing, right? Where he bought and built, let's say lower at a good price, sold high at a good clip. Now real estate is not making a lot of sense for a lot of deals right now because interest rates have, closely or more so doubled in the last 6 months. So now he's going, well, but stock market has dropped. Now let's have the trust invest into the stock market at a discount, right? So that's the part of what's called optimal timing. Jake, you want to speak on that optimal timing, Freedom?
So that's incredibly important, and I think one of your videos talks very well to that as well, in the sense that it's all about putting timing back in your hands. It might be a great time to sell out of the market in real estate, and it might be a perfect time to diversify now that you're out of real estate and buy some stocks and bonds and different things that are at steep discounts, or at least dollar cost average in. Whereas you might want to eventually be back in real estate, but selling high, it might not be the best time to go and buy high in the same market. And so the optimal thing that we can possibly do for our investors is help them be strategic about their asset classes, move in and out of different asset classes versus real estate, crypto, even water shares, racing horses. We have clients with all kinds of assets. And this has become liberating to them, Brett. It has allowed them, this has become a financial tool that without having to sell, chop your ass into many pieces, pay taxes, and then invest a smaller portion, they're able to invest the bulk majority of all of their proceeds into the next asset or asset class.
Yep. So instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? I'm overwhelmed. I'm frustrated. I'm stressed out because I should have sold last year. Not only the fear of missing out, like, oh my gosh, I missed the boat. We want to encourage you to be creative in this, right? So no, I didn't miss the boat. Now's a good time to sell. Yeah, I may have, my value of my assets may have been down a little bit, but now let's sell the business. Let's sell the real estate. Let's sell the primary home. I wish I could say the same for crypto. I mean, Jake and Pierce and I try to get as many people out of crypto before the whole crash, but right now it's just been hammered, right? But not that if you're listening to this and you're in crypto, have a plan now so that when it does come back, you have a plan to exit, right? And we talk about taking away the leverage from the market. Take away the leverage from the market. And the number one thing is optimal timing and having clarity and confidence that you can exit in a tax flow efficient way. So important. So we want to be creative with our solution here. And then we want to pounce. Most millionaires or a lot of billionaires are made during the shifts, during the market, complete upside downs, right? And this is what's going to happen again. They feel like 2023 is going to be painful. Okay. It's here. I heard a good analogy today. It's anyone ever go to the Donner Party or Lake Tahoe? I'm about an hour and a half from Lake Tahoe. You know the story, right? Like this, they were traveling, and they weren't in spring, they were in summer, they were in winter, and the biggest amount of snow, and they got trapped, right? Well, the snow has hit us. It's hitting us right now. And you don't want to get trapped in the snow. You want to get a creative solution to be able to exit and then use it to your advantage while the market is lower, where there's opportunities and things are on sale. Okay. So our goal is to help you feel clarity, give you confidence, give you certainty. We don't want you to feel depressed or stressed or overwhelmed because of the loss of value in your asset. Or the loss of time from not selling. We also don't want you to have the unnecessary stress of having to carry assets and not have diversification, liquidity, and debt freedom. Because right now, if you have debt, especially if it's set to adjust, this is not your friend. That should be alarms going off. Oh my gosh, where is my debt? Where is set to reassess and or be out of its fixed rate? And or you say, no, I have fixed rate debt. I have some clients right now. We're looking at multifamily exits here in Sacramento as a broker as well. And I'm saying, no, they're going, no, I got fixed rate debt. I go, well, that's your advantage. I go, if it's assumable, is it assumable? And we found out, yeah, it's assumable. Well, guess what? That new buyer now can assume your debt, especially if it has a couple of years remaining. That's great. Now they don't have to get an adjustable. I mean, it's going to adjust in a few years, but you don't want to have to wait to have to sell, when the adjustment is going to happen sooner. So why don't we sell while it's still fixed? Let them assume the debt. Now it's actually your advantage. You still get a decent price, and now we can go into the deferred sales trust and wait. Guess what? Wait for other opportunities for people who are not taking action, right? Who don't have certainty, don't have clarity, don't have a plan. And guess what those properties are going to have? Those properties are going to go on discount, or they're going to be foreclosed on because people overpaid and they had too much debt, not enough liquidity. I have my whole story on this when I was at Marcus and Millichap, how all of this happened. And we're seeing a lot of it happening again. Not that we think 2008 is happening again, but there's going to be opportunities. And this is where the deferred sales trust gives you that. So that being said, we want to open it up and for questions or thoughts from anybody. And in fact, I'd love to hear from Kristen. I know you've been paying attention, Kristen, and you have such a sharp mind when it comes to all things tax, actually. So Kristen, I wonder if you have any thoughts or comments or questions on anything we just talked about.
Yes. So first of all, I wasn't really paying attention because it was like going straight over my head. I was like, I just going to ignore this whole discussion. And then Pierce kind of recapped it and it kind of like cleared it up for me. So I think I know what's going on. So I have two questions, kind of. One, I always go to the tax prep question and you're like, I'm not a tax preparer, Kristen is. But here's my question. You have the 80-20 split, trust owns 20%. Who's preparing the tax return on that joint thing? Because
in that scenario, it'd be Shay. It'd be Shay or it'd be Jake, whoever the GP was. Keep going. Sorry.
I was gonna say, so whenever you have the trust involved at all, you guys have people that do that.
So on the trust side,
So we have them. Go ahead, Jake. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. I was just going to say on the trust side of things, we have specialists that take care of the trust tax return, but we provide your other preparers with information about the trust so that you can include that in the partnership return that you would normally do for any other joint venture. Instead of a person, instead of an LLC or a corporation, it's just a trust tax ID and name.
Right. So I know like the regular trust return you guys prepare every year, you have people that do that. So when we have a partnership, say it's filing a 1065 partnership return, I own 80%, my trust owns 20%. You're saying I prepare that trust return and get the trust, their K1?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Except the only nuance is you don't own the trust, right? So you are the lender to the trust, but the trust happens to be a silent joint venture partner. So it's your responsibility as the managing member of that LLC, right? To have the LLC's tax return filed. And so, we don't do tax returns for the personal clients. We have them go back to their existing relationship. And if they don't, sometimes they're like, well, I don't have a great one. They're not as advanced, then we send them to folks like you, Kristen, who are, right? So we'll refer that out, but we're not doing it internally, and the DST tax attorneys aren't doing it either. They're just focused like a laser on the deferred sales trust, right? So yeah, that'd be your responsibility. In this scenario, it'd be Shay. Shay will have his own personal CPA, provide the business tax return for the LLC and the K1, and then the K1 will be sent to the deferred sales trust. Now, as the trustee for the deferred sales trust, we have a third party that does all the tax returns for the trust. I will provide that K1 for the deferred sales trust tax return.
Okay. I didn't know. So I didn't know if you guys were like, yeah, we don't trust other CPAs to do that partnership since the trust was involved. But sounds like
no. We work we work hand in hand and cooperatively with existing. In fact, we prefer that the one that has, and we prefer that CPA come in and vet and ask the questions. And yeah, we're not in the business of taking that business, right? We're in the business of being the support to that entire CPA's client base, right? So in fact, it should open up more opportunities because in this scenario, Shay has a new LLC, which has a new LLC tax return, has a new K1, new preparation work, right? And he's going to go do another deal. And we typically also we don't actually do one LLC for multiple business ventures. He'll form another LLC for his next business venture, keep this one, and then this one. And the trust keeps playing the joint venture partner. Essentially, we have an extra 25 to 50% of working capital in this scenario because he had a zero basis at 2.5 million, which does what? Creates more opportunities for commerce, more opportunity for growth, more opportunities for tax preparation and work. So it's naturally going to build. And that's a good thing for the government too, because they're going to get more tax revenue. They're going to get more housing, which is the number one crisis, for real estate in America is just housing, and he's providing housing. So yeah, all of this works hand in hand, if that makes sense, Kristen.
Yes. Okay. And then my other question is, just yesterday I met with a new prospect. She's got 30 rentals and she's like cash poor, right? She's in her 70s, her husband's 79. So, but her philosophy in life is I trust real estate. Stock market's a total scam. I don't want to be invested in stock markets at all. I wish I'd never done any IRAs. So you guys know people that are in real estate want to stay in real estate. Like, how do you get them to diversify? Like, she needs diversification. And how do you get over that hurdle that I find any real estate investor is kind of stuck in?
It's a great question. And it's one where it's not the asset, it's the team is what I would say. And I would encourage her to keep an open mind and to talk with Jake and I and to walk through. And doesn't mean we sell all 30 properties tomorrow and put it all into the stock market. We would never recommend that because it's kind of like you're taking a fish and you're trying to have him, climb a tree. And in fact, that's never a good scenario. But dollar cost averaging and getting to know the team and to work with us, we educate and we bring in experts. So Jake is an expert in all things securities, stock market, financial advising, and also financial planning. Like it's not just about, he's also great with real estate, great with business ventures. So he's not a cookie cutter financial advisor that's just about all security. So he's literally brilliant at what he does. Now on the other side, I focus, and I'm biased. I'm Kristen. I'm a commercial real estate, right? I love real estate, so I get where she's coming from. I grew up in the business, and my bias is towards real estate. My expertise is not really a bias. It's more so it's just what I've always known and done and help people with. So the good news is the way we structure the trust, 80% can basically go into what's called illiquid assets, such as passive or active real estate. Okay. 20% liquid investment grade securities. We can dollar cost average. And so one simple talk track would be, well, you'd sell it for X. What would X be? And after tax, you would owe what? Well, I'd owe this much. I'd pay, 25, 30, 40% in tax. Okay. Well, what if we just took, let's say it's the assets are worth 5 million collectively or 6 million. Well, what if we took what you would have paid in tax and that amount will be the 20% that goes into securities? It's like found money, right? And in the meantime, we'll invest into real estate that actually, and I found too with the Deferred Sales Trust, we typically increase the cash flow by 50 or 60%. So you say you're kind of like you're playing with house money here. You would have paid the tax anyways. You're increasing your cash flow by 50 or 60% with the 8% compounding interest rate. That will go into real estate regardless. So what do you have to lose, right? And if Jake performs the way he could perform and he's buying at a discount, you very well might just take all that cash flow that's producing and the trust is producing and roll that into more security. So it's really the plan and it's the team to help execute. Jake, what do you want to add to that?
I would say that a lot of our clients are very much like this client, and that we normally have had good success through an educational process, helping them know and understand how they can move in and out of side of assets. So I have had lots of clients who have only ever been in real estate all of their life and have avoided the market like the plague, invest in the market. Not all of their assets, but when it makes sense. And they usually do it for tax reasons because of an efficient tax vehicle that provides a deferral like the Deferred Sales Trust or micro captives done the right way or whatever, right? There's a lot of different things out there that might have some kind of participation with the stock market. But we also provide them from the very beginning how they can get out. And so a little bit more of some advice rather than just transactional trading. In the tax realm, this would be kind of like rather than just filing returns, but also doing planning. And a lot of them haven't had that before. So through this educational process, and it doesn't always happen that they invest in the market, but they at least become more comfortable with it as an idea or as an option that they can invest in. And some of them, again, we just always help them with other assets like real estate. Sometimes we help them with marketable securities that are also real estate based. There's everything under the sun that we help our clients with. Like I mentioned earlier on, I have some clients here locally in Utah because it's kind of like a really valuable thing to own water shares. I mean, that's not a marketable security. That's not a liquid asset necessarily because you have to create a market for it. But it's something that they can hold, as well as land, as well as real estate, as well as direct placements, as well as oil and gas, as well as all of these other things that they can own. The nice thing is that we're catering to them and their needs and their objectives. Sometimes they've only ever done real estate because that's all they've ever known. That's what they grew up doing. But their needs and their objectives don't match with a real estate investment. And it becomes an educational process to help them know and understand what assets do match with what their needs actually are. And at the end of the day, we're not pushy people. We're very much educators, but we're educators who have real life experience. And that's why we share a lot of stories, and that we're able to share these stories because we have a lot of other clients all across the country who are doing all of these things. And it's usually something very helpful. Sometimes we even put clients in contact with each other so that they're not just hearing it from us, but they can hear it directly from the source of somebody else's experience. And sometimes it helps them get over the hurdle that is stopping them from moving on.
Okay.
So there's not an answer for everybody that fits. Everybody's situation is different. The stock market's not for everybody, neither is the real estate market.
And I would say the action steps, Christian, would be, is she willing to do the work, right? What's the work? Well, the work is to dive in and wrestle with these discussions, right?
Mhm.
The last thing you want to do is not take action. And the cool thing, the way that Jake and I and the tax team work, it's conditional, 100% conditional. And there's no money charged. She can jump on this webinar with us. She can come on a call with you, me, her, and Jake, and the tax team. And we can wrestle and discuss and, move that Rubik's Cube around to find out if it could be a good fit. And so are they willing to take the time and the energy and make the commitment to creating the plan and to clarifying what outcome they want, right? Clarifying what it would also mean if the pain if she doesn't do it, right? I mean, what is it going to cost her in time, energy, stress, location, freedom? Even, I don't know, you said 30 properties. I don't know what kind of debt she has on these properties, but it could be scary. Like I saw clients, friends, and family lose everything in 2008 crash because they had too much debt, not enough liquidity. They're real estate rich, cash flow poor or poorer. And so maybe it's the pain. Maybe you got to focus on the pain, Kristen. Maybe you got to focus on the pleasure of what she's trying to accomplish. But I would encourage her to be committed to doing the work, because the Deferred Sales Trust is not for everybody. And Jake and I, do like an application interview style where we're interviewing and really getting to understand and know what it is that she's trying to accomplish. And we'll be the first ones to tell her and you that if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. Right. And we'll maybe recommend something else, or sometimes it's just, hey, just hold on what you have. I was talking with a seller the other day, and he's got probably $7 or $8 million in real estate. And he's in his 70s. And he owns a lot of them free and clear, and he's cash flowing. He's doing fine. And sometimes he gets tired because he's got his truck, but sometimes part of him, he kind of likes driving around the old truck and going to the properties, doing the thing. And he goes, I like to sell, Brett, but my kids don't want me to sell. I'm like, doesn't sound like the pain is really there. And that's okay. And I go, well, what do you want to do? He goes, I'm good. And he also invested in the stock market by himself. He actually enjoys that. He he picks, I'm doing so well. I'm doing okay in that. Not so well this year, but well before. So I think clarifying and helping them clarify what the ultimate outcome is. And sometimes they don't even know that until you're asking these type of questions with them versus just tax. I mean, tax is just a number, but what's the ultimate outcome for their time and their energy, their stress, their location? And then what's the pain if they don't do it, right? What does that mean? Another way to ask it too is, let's say the portfolio is worth, I'm just throwing a number, $5 million for these 30 properties, $10 million. You would ask you ask her, if you had $10 million right now, would you go buy your 30 properties? And if they hesitate or say, well, no, say, well, that's a great reason why you should sell. Like, what is it about if you had 10 million or 5 million, or whatever it's worth, that you wouldn't buy those assets? Well, it's a lot of time. It's a lot of stress. I keep getting calls like, I'm 70 now. I want to travel more. I want more of this. I want more of that. maybe it's a legacy play, maybe it's something, right? But so try to shift, ask better questions to help them unlock better outcomes. Does that make sense, Kristen?
Yeah, and we had the whole discussion yesterday, and she's fine managing them. She's like, I've got professional managers. It doesn't stress me out at all. Doesn't bother me at all to manage them. And I said, if we could sell those today with no tax consequences, would you do it? And she's like, absolutely. For her, it's all about the cash flow. She likes the cash flow and thinking ahead. She's like, I need income for retirement. And so it's for her, it's all about the cash flow. And she's got the cash flow, and that's what she's living off of. So
she's got enough cash flow.
Yes.
Oh, so it's anything like there's any pain. There's no pain in management. There's no pain in cash flow. There's no pain in retirement. There's just not enough pain right now, as it sounds like.
Right. I mean, she has a handful of properties she hates, 7 of them. She's like, I hate these ones in Alabama.
Okay. Well, hold on right there. So, okay, great. Let's start with these 7. And let's look at, hating these 7. And by the way, for those 7, we're not going to, here's the reality. It's not like you're going to sell the 7, put in the trust, and then she's going to be forced into the stock market. We have clients that are waiting for the stock market to shift and go down. In fact, Jake and I have a big one. They sold a $29 million property in Texas, and the money's still sitting in the bank. It's because he's like, Brett, I'm just cautious. I'm not a stock market guy. I know we need to go into that. The values are still going down, and I still maybe won't do this real estate transaction. Millions of dollars just sitting in the bank. So like Jake said, we're never going to press it. We're only going to offer opportunities and educate. And then even then, we'd probably dollar cost average in, right? So I would say, see if she's willing to commit to at least to have a conversation with me, you, and Jake to see what's even possible for her. Because here's the reality too. She's in her 70s. Although there's not pain in right now, as people get older, they have health challenges. As people get older, life changes, right? And it can change rapidly. So you don't want to ever have to sell in a fire sale based upon a need. In fact, I would argue the best time to sell is when you don't need to sell. You don't need to negotiate, right? So say it like that. Say, hey, I get it. Yeah, but these 7 properties, let's at least establish a plan in case you do want to sell. And then again, ride the bike. Do the first 2 or 3 properties, right? Now, let me also remind you too, the minimum deal size is $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain, unless you have 2 assets at $500,000 each. So if these are 30 houses at $200,000, then we could, it's not a good fit already. I already know, right? So make sure that whatever it might be, it's at least meeting those minimums, right? Unless she has like 3 properties that are each worth 4 or 5 million each or whatever. And then she has some smaller ones she wants to try it with in the lieu of maybe doing the bigger ones. We just want it to be able to scale. Remember, because you can have one trust, multiple promissory notes. So does that make sense, Kristen?
Yeah. Is the max you would do 2 properties, or if she had 3 properties at 400,000 each?
Yeah. So if she had 3 at 400, where she live? What state?
She is in Utah, but her property.
Okay. And that's kind of the middle of the road for the taxes, for cap gains tax, right? And what part of Utah is she in?
Salt Lake.
Okay. So she's not far from Jake, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would say is let's get her and Jake in person, right? That might help, versus just the Zoom, if she's open to that for a lunch or a meeting there. So, yeah, but at 3 at 400, if she was motivated to do the work and put the time and energy in, dude, yeah, that should be fine. She's not in a Texas or a Florida. And Jake, correct me if I'm wrong. What's the capital gains tax for Utah?
It's the state income tax rate, which is 4.95.
Yeah. So she's looking at about 30% at 400, and assuming her basis is 0, and she can combine those 3 for 1.2 million, Kristen. Jake and I are happy to work that deal. No problem.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the help. Those are my questions.
You're welcome. Great job, Kristen. Thanks for asking them. Anyone else have any other questions about anything that we just said? By the way, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to learn more and to connect with me. And you can go to strategictaxsolutions.com to learn more about Jake Miller. That's strategictaxsolutions.com. Pierce also has Kingdom Luxury Realty is his website, as well as his podcast or his YouTube channel. Of course, you have Capital Gains Tax, which is podcast YouTube channel. I have the book coming out with Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank. Jake Miller's in the book as well. Pretty cool stuff. But we do have Juan, we have Ricardo, we have Jay Fran, we We have iPhone de Camellia. But if no further questions or thoughts, Jake, I'm about to get to the beach here with the family. So do you want to remind people one last time where they can find you?
Absolutely. strategictaxsolutions.com, 1-800-773-1848, as well as every Friday. This is where we're at.
Friday at 10 a.m. PST, 1 p.m. Eastern. Jake, Pierce, thank you, Jake. And Pierce, you want to remind people where they can find you?
Yeah, you can go to kingdomluxuryrealty.com and you can find me there.
All right. And so anyone else listening, here's the things you can take action on. You can book a time with Jake or Brett or myself by going to our websites there. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, Capital Gains Tax Solutions. You can subscribe to the podcast. Okay. You can download our free ebook. You can join our mastermind next week by going to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com so you can be a part of this mastermind. So take action, right? And plan and go out and clarify what you're trying to achieve and how a tax flow strategy like the Deferred Sales Trust could fit into that. We are here for you and ready to serve. Please reach out to us. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And we will talk to you again real soon. Bye now.
Bye-bye.